Started.
All right, sounds good. So we get started. So thank y'all for being here once again on the Wednesday night. Appreciate y'all being here. As I said before the song, we're going to look a little more at Saul's testimony here, starting in verse 20. You may remember from Sunday night, we discussed where he regained his sight. He had already been spiritually speaking, once was lost, now he's found, went from blindness to seeing. He once was blind, but now he sees spiritually. And we see here he received his physical sight back as well. In the verses we ended with last week, along with finally getting a bite to eat and maybe drinking some of that baptism water too. And we see here that he spent some days with the disciples at Damascus. And we'll refer back to that. But we'll start in verse 20, and as of right now, we'll read down to 25. There's several small sections, and I'm looking to just do from 20 to 25, but we'll see how we get along in that. So we'll start in verse 20. Acts chapter 9, verse 20. It says, "Immediately he preached the Christ in the synagogues, that he is the Son of God. Then all who heard were amazed and said, 'Is this not he who destroyed those who called on this name in Jerusalem, and has come here for that purpose, so that he might bring them bound to the chief priests?' But Saul increased all the more in strength, and confounded the Jews who dwelt in Damascus, proving that this Jesus is the Christ." Verse 23. "Now after many days were passed, the Jews plotted to kill him. But their plot became known to Saul, and they watched the gates day and night to kill him. Then the disciples took him by night and let him down through the wall in a large basket." So quite the turn of events right here. And I read all this to say, as a whole, no doubt this is evidence of a changed life, and that this following Jesus is just some fad or fairy tale, where this Jesus is not real. Saul had it all. He was in charge. He had the authority to go and take people, either kill them or take them back to Jerusalem for calling on the Lord. He was the big dog. He was the guy in charge. And he left all that to be with those that he persecuted, and now the Jews are trying to persecute and kill him. What a testimony that is, and all going to show this is a real conversion. This Jesus he's following is real. Nobody would leave all the power, the money, and everything that Saul had. No one would leave all that to follow a lie, or to follow a Jesus that is made up. He left all of those things he had, the notoriety, the authority, left all of that to follow Jesus and declare Jesus, and now they're trying to kill him. Amazing story to show this is real stuff. Nobody would lose all that to believe in a lie, not on purpose, or to believe in a Jesus that don't exist, or something they didn't truly believe in. Clearly, Saul truly believed in this here. No doubt he had a radical conversion on the road to Damascus. So we see here, he truly believed what he was saying and said what he believed right here. To give up all of that and not to be like, well, I changed my mind, this isn't real, or no, I didn't really convert, or any of this. I take it all back, just kidding, to get his power back. No, he was there and preached the Christ in the synagogues. Amazing here to see the change in Saul. And so we'll go back here in verse 20 and look here more at it as we go. But I must point out in verse 19, before we get to 20, it says, "And Saul spent some days with the disciples at Damascus." And that's very important here. He had just gotten saved, but he spent time with God's people. People that could disciple him, teach him God's word, help him to know more. And after he spent time with these disciples, what do we have in the very next verse? 20. "Immediately he preached the Christ in the synagogues, that he is the Son of God." Wow. Immediately after receiving his sight and spending some time with the believers in Damascus, Saul went to the synagogue to tell the Jews about Jesus Christ. Some Christians counsel new believers, wait until they are thoroughly grounded in their faith, or before attempting to share the gospel. We don't see that with Saul. He's a new believer in Christ. He's a baby Christian. Perhaps doesn't know much, but he knew Christ. He could share Christ. He could share his testimony Saul took some time to learn about Jesus before beginning his worldwide ministry, no doubt, but he did not wait to witness. As soon as you become a Christian, you're equipped to witness. There's no, well, I need to be a Christian, for a year or two, and then, maybe I can start sharing the gospel. As soon as you get saved, you can witness. You should witness. You have Jesus. You know Jesus. You have a testimony. We can share that. The very day we even get saved. Amazing to see that. So, he took some time to learn about Jesus before his worldwide ministry, but he witnessed at the beginning. Although we should not rush into a ministry role unprepared, we do not need to wait before telling others of what Jesus has done for us. And some of that I shared for you was actually study note here in 9:20. And we see that right here. He didn't become the big missionary he was overnight. But we see here, he was prepared to go and tell others about it. It says he preached the Christ in the synagogues. And I like that. It says the Christ. Not a Christ or not some type of Christ or an antichrist. The Christ. The one and only. The way, the truth, the life. The one Christ. That he is the Son of God. The very one that had that conversation with him on the road to Damascus. And no doubt this is shocking to the people. Look at verse 21. It says that all who heard were amazed and said, "Is this not he who destroyed those who call on this name in Jerusalem and has come here for that purpose, so that he might bring them bound to the chief priests?" These folks here are just flabbergasted. Ain't this that guy that was killing people for saying this name, and now he's among them saying this name? Went from killing them to being among them. As I said, no doubt, a powerful testimony, and people are realizing that. As I've said before, you can't argue with a changed life. As I've shared before, I've heard testimonies of people who were drug addicts, alcoholics, spending time in jail. But then they're out of prison and now they're pastors or song directors and things of that sort. I actually did hear a testimony from a former song director of mine I had at where I used to go to church. And he had a testimony like that, but now he's being used of the Lord in leading music. That's God right there. That's not, well, I'm going to try to do better in my own strength, or I'm just going to turn over a new leaf, or I'm going to try a program or some other religion. That's not any of those things. That's a transformed life by God. And these people see that there's a difference here. And I said, you can't argue with a changed life. You can try to put God down or act like God doesn't have anything to do with it or deny God, but when you see what a person was and you knew them before, and now you see what they were or who they are afterwards, and you see the radical change, they once were this, but now they're this, that's God. That has made that change in them. And they see that here with Saul. And that makes all the more it convincing of what you're saying, because you have the testimony of a changed life. Not just blowing some smoke or saying some things or quoting a few verses, but you have the testimony of what he's done in your life to back it up when you share it with others. And so they're amazed at this. From killing the Christians to becoming one of them and now trying to share Christ with the Jews. The one he was on the side of, now he's trying to convert them. On the same team, trying to kill Christians, and now he's trying to convert the ones he was on the same side of. What a change in life this is. And it goes on to say, in 22, it says, "But Saul increased all the more in strength, and confounded the Jews who dwelt in Damascus, proving that this Jesus is the Christ." I like how it says he increased all the more in strength. Now, I ain't going to lie. I would say, this is not everyone, but maybe some people, when you hear the word strength, your mind may tend to go too physical at first. You hear strength, well, you think, well, how strong is this person? Or how much can I lift? How much can I do this? When you hear strength, but there's different types of strength. Sure, there's physical strength, but you can be mentally strong. You can be emotionally strong. And here from how this reads, it's potentially speaking of being spiritually strong. We see how Saul is a Christian here. He's sharing the gospel, preaching Christ in the synagogues. And it says at the very next verse that Saul increased all the more in strength. So maybe it's a variation of those, but perhaps talking about spiritual strength as well. And it should be the same for us. Are we growing spiritually? Are our Christian roots deepening and we're growing stronger in our faith? he increased all the more in strength. And it says, and confounded the Jews who dwelt in Damascus, proving that this Jesus is the Christ. So these Jews are just not getting it. Especially if they don't know Jesus. What's with this guy? He used to hate the Christians. Why is he now with them? See, a testimony can cause people to start questioning. This guy used to go get drunk with me all the time. We used to go partying on the weekends all the time, but now he doesn't want to. What's different? What's changed in his life? When we see here, the Jews are confounded who dwelt in Damascus. What is going on here? He increased more in strength, growing as a Christian. The Jews are not getting it. But what does it say? It says, proving that this Jesus is the Christ. Not just saying it, not hoping it's true or wishing it's true. He's proving it. Through his testimony, through the Word. There is proof, and it can be proved that Jesus is the Christ. And he showed that through his own testimony right here. All the more you grow in the strength, the better you can be at proving or giving an answer to the hope that's in us, as we talked about Sunday. Proving Jesus is the Christ. But we see here, as in the next verses, things begin to change in the last three, 23, 24, and 25. It starts to change. As Jesus even told the disciples in the Gospels, he's like, and as I've mentioned before, if they persecuted me, they will persecute you also. And we see that now with Saul. Verse 23, now after many days were passed, the Jews plotted to kill him. Saul used to be that guy trying to kill all the Christians. Now he's on the other end of the stick. Now he's got the Jews trying to kill him. He went from being the one trying to kill to now being the one they're trying to kill. Isn't that something? Going from the murderer to the potential victim. Why? Because of his changed life. Because of Christ. But somehow we see here in 24, Saul knew about it. Excuse me. He's going to get to Paul. We'll get there eventually, but it still says Paul. How he came to know the plot, it doesn't say. But he found out that they were plotting to kill him. Verse 24. But their plot became known to Saul. And they watched the gates day and night to kill him. So they're looking for opportunities. They're out to get him. We hear about shootings nowadays, like we talked about with Charlie Kirk and other things. We hear about shootings and assassinations. Well, it's nothing new. You can read through the Bible and like, this is the murdering, killing, assassination. It's always been around. And it will continue always to be around. Sin will always be a problem unless you turn to Jesus, who will fix the problem. Or until Jesus comes one day when he comes back to make everything right. Referring back to the judgment days as we've discussed in the past. But here, they're looking for an opportunity to take him out. They want to get this guy out of here. He's proclaiming Jesus. Watch the gates day and night. They on the lookout. Why? To kill him. But thanks be to the Lord, through fellow Christians, they were there for him. They provided a way out. Verse 25. Then the disciples took him by night and let him down through the wall in a large basket. That's quite the escape plan there. That must have been a big basket. When I hear basket, I think of a little, picnic basket. No, this was big enough to hold an adult man. And to lower him down or go through a wall, I'm like, boy, this sounds like movie action type of stuff right here. But they were able to help him escape. And you may remember, and there's a similar story of this in the Old Testament, the spies in Joshua. Rahab helped them escape. There's several different escape stories, and we see Paul's here. He was lowered in a basket through an opening in a wall to get out of Damascus. It saved this new Christian for great service to God. He was saved to continue to have a ministry for God. God has a purpose for every person's life, which leads to real adventure for those willing to cooperate. So amazing, Saul's testimony. And as I've said, maybe we don't all have a testimony like Saul. I would bear to say none of us have a testimony like Saul. But the same point, but as I even shared at the fair, testimonies are completely different, but they all have the same focal point, and that's Jesus, where the change in life began, where they went from death to life, blind to seeing, lost to found. So as I've said before, let us use our testimony. Let us share Christ. Regardless of how long we've been a Christian, Let us share Christ. If you're a Christian, you can witness. You can share your testimony. You can share Christ. And let us may stand firm for Christ, as we see Saul did here too, even having to escape. But we see Paul didn't compromise. He didn't give in and just, never mind, I take it all back. This isn't real. Or I'm not going to be a strong Christian. He didn't take it back. He remained a strong Christian. So let's learn from his example and trust God as he did here. And we'll see even through the rest of Saul's story, and even as Paul, how God works things out. So let's learn from that. And thank y'all once again for being here for another portion of Acts. So would you stand with me? Would you stand with me for invitation? And a moment of silence, every head bowed, every eye closed. If that's touched you,